We're at the end times today.
Oh my God, that's scary, man.
It is scary. It was the longest. We're currently in the longest night of the year, aren't we?
Are we really?
Yeah, it's the winter solstice. The 21st was, right?
I don't know, man. Oh, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's the dark times today.
The
Literally.
dark times, man. It's scary. It's scary to be alive.
It's especially scary when it gets dark at 4:30 at night every day, and you kind of you wake up like I do on a weekend at like 1 p.m. parentheses maybe a little later, and then
On a
2 hours
weekday?
later it gets I work like on a weekend specifically.
Oh, okay, weekends.
It gets dark, and it's so sad. But I look outside and I see the darkness, and I see the tall buildings. You know what it makes me think of?
What, man?
A dark building place with lots of streets. Makes me think of a night city.
I wonder why. It's almost like what you're looking at is a city at night.
I mean, okay, I was about to do the video thing. I don't know. Long ramble about that before I get into the whole night city thing, and we talk about the elephant in the room, and then we get to our.
I get it.
Oh, super funny! Wow, it's like he wrote this.
I had no idea what the hell you're talking about. I was like, yeah, of course it's gonna be a city at night, and it's one night. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, dude.
Cyberpunk.
So it's
gotcha.
just life has been cyberpunk until
you've
I
been
went
sucked
down
into
to your
it.
place. I did get sucked into it, and then I had time to like. It's like I had a bad breakup with somebody, or no, I was like in a toxic relationship with somebody. I'm like, man, this is great. This is awesome. And then we take a break, and I come back. I'm like,
I don't know if it is so great.
was it good? I don't know how I feel about it. So we were chatting before. It's basically the same formula of like Fallout, Skyrim, run around, kill people, grab stuff, do quests. It's the same thing.
Could have been so much more, man.
It could have. It could have
and
been
it
so
still
much
could
more.
be, but it's not right now.
I don't. To me, like the biggest problem with it, and don't worry, this is not going to be an entire cyberpunk podcast. This leads very well into the next thing. But it's like the replay value to me is extremely low.
Really? Even to make like different decision points and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people, including myself, are just like, just reload the save and find out what happens. It's the entire quest is the same up until the end result.
So it doesn't affect like future quests?
Not really. There's
interesting.
The side quests that people have really been loving, the side quests, whenever somebody goes, oh, the main quest is great, but the side quests also feel like main quests. They're talking about the romance side quests, of which there are 4. They're decently long, and then there's the one with Delamain, which I won't spoil stuff about. It's with a taxi that you meet earlier.
Yeah, I haven't.
And
I
that's
still
a really
haven't
great
played
one.
Since then.
That's a really great one. Outside of that, I can't think of a single other quest line that was significant. All the other ones are go to this thing, kill, shoot stuff.
None of the main stuff? You didn't like any of the main stuff?
I like the main quests, but I'm the type of person that puts that off and like experiences the world and the life. And I love the acting and the motion capture and the scenes. Like the characters feel very real, but there are very few quests that are cool outside of the romance and the main quest. So when people say, oh, the side quests are great, they're still basically talking about the main quest because the romance options bleed into the main quest. So there's no good side quest. It's
inspiring me less and less to continue this video game. I might just wait for a couple months till things are patched out a little bit more, or I don't know.
The bugs aren't that significant to people on PC.
Not even bugs. I'm hoping like because they apparently have 2 very big substantial patches coming in January and February. If those are just bugs, I'd be very surprised.
But what if you could just throw anything in there and say, if this was in the patch, I'd play it? There's nothing that they could do in a patch.
For our audio
in 2
listeners,
months.
I am stroking my imaginary beard right now. I don't know.
I'd
like them to fix the AI, make it more interactive, and I watched the video.
Voice lines.
It came up on Facebook. Okay, I was scrolling, as we do, and it came up on Facebook. It's one of those stupid videos where it like has a video scrunched up in a square that has text on the bottom and the top, and it was comparing GTA 5 to Cyberpunk, and it was showing how much stuff GTA 5, a game came out, God knows how long ago.
We were in high school.
Yeah, has over Cyberpunk. Like, you throw a bomb in the ocean in Cyberpunk, the water doesn't respond. What's up with that? And apparently, if you threw a grenade off screen, turned away, There was no explosion. There was no audio.
You don't need to worry about that. You're not looking at it.
How does that
cool
slip
guys
through
don't
the
look at
cracks,
explosions.
though? I have no idea.
Well, it's one of those small things that they just don't need. The areas they worked were assets, static things they placed around the city.
And QA they did not have a QA team. The QA team was their department that was playing the game and developing the game. So it makes sense why these things would go miss.
They didn't have a QA team?
As far as I've heard, their QA team was the team playing it and developing it simultaneously.
I didn't hear about that. That makes a lot of sense, though.
Yes. If they're already crunched, that's going to make it harder.
Ooh, this game. It's interesting. So a lot of what you're talking about right now, particularly like with the city just having terrible AI and there's not like little things to do and all the small details.
And no mini games. You can't just go to play poker with somebody like in Red Dead.
Yeah, like how cool would Cyberpunk minigames or like Cyberpunk darts be? I'm sure it would literally just be going eat with a holographic dart.
I mean, if they're bringing multiplayer to the game in for like 2 years,
there's no way.
I mean, that was the initial plan, right? 2 years or so. That's when the multiplayer comes into the game. What would you do together?
Something like GTA getting gigs from fixers.
But in GTA, there's at least stuff to do. You can go to a bar and hang out with the buddy. Red Dead Online, you can go play poker with your group. You can't even.
That kind of stuff is good.
You can't even play darts with a buddy in Cyberpunk right now. I guess when it launches in 3 years, or 2 years, they're planning on these things being in the game by then. I don't know.
What can save it for me is if they give me a roadmap and I see what they're planning. Just be transparent. Turn it into an pseudo early access game, beef up the city, make it much better.
Yeah,
that's what they have to do, and I don't think CD Projekt Red that's just something that they like to do.
Single-handedly, the management of that company have single-handedly shot themselves. All the goodwill that company had, they shot themselves in the foot. They don't have any goodwill in the community anymore. It's sad.
And I do definitely think a lot of it's on the management. Because if you've got this like
100%, I think it's all on them.
Absolutely, and it's a sticky thing. But what we're here to talk about today.
To kind of transfer this over, I started playing Fallout and I watched a very short video talking about this is why I wanted to get back into Fallout New Vegas, because I think it's a great example of Braxton was just talking about replayability. It's a great example of showing player agency. And that's going to come huge into what we're going to be talking about here in a minute. Player agency is in New Vegas. You can very dramatically change the story, and it will continue if you just walk. You can kill anybody in the game except for kids, because they have to get that. They can't get like really bad rating. Yeah,
you can't kill kids in Cyberpunk. I tested this yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. But you can walk up and shoot a very important NPC right in the face, killing him, and the story revolves and continues around that. It doesn't just, end right there like you were saying with Cyberpunk quests. That quest is very self-contained. It doesn't affect the next one. The decisions you make in this game, there are branching trees. You kill a guy, and then everyone else is talking about you killing this one character, and they're like, man, I wish I would have been there to see that. Or some guy's like, man, I'm super pissed at you because you killed this really important guy. But this quest, the story revolves. It's not just like, you have failed, not stuff like that. I love that. And I think it's very applicable to D&D. You roll with the punches and continue moving along.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were streaming earlier today, one of the first missions is that first town gets assaulted by some sort of group because they're looking for a guy, and I was like, wait, what happens if you kill? Your character would not know this. It's purely metagaming. What happens if you kill that guy? As he runs in and he tells that he's like, you could give us this guy or else I'll send my buds and we'll go kill the town. Right there.
I haven't done that, but I would imagine the gang would probably come a few days later and attack anyway. So I think that's what they're supposed to do.
You think they would know?
I don't know.
They would bring it up?
I know you can,
because he yeets out of there.
Yeah, he
made a comment. He goes, woo, and he goes straight out.
I know you can kill the guy that you're supposed to help. You can also go help the gang to attack the town. There's a lot of different ways to navigate that one quest. And like, I was just thinking in that quest as well, in that tutorial, I'll spoil it for everybody because this is literally the tutorial to Fallout New Vegas that came out forever ago. You go hunting geckos with this person, and her dog can very well be killed. And she reacts to it, moves on, is sad, but moves on from it. And in that same quest with the guy we're talking about, the guy you're supposed to be helping can die, and it doesn't end the game. They're like, oh shit, he's dead? Okay, I wish it had gone differently, but we're have to deal with it now.
Just to let you know, Ryan friendly fired the hell out of that dog when he was fighting.
I did not realize this, but apparently I did.
Shot it right in the head.
But I love that about that game. And so many games nowadays that I think don't have that philosophy. And I can understand why they don't, because it's hard to tell a self-contained, if we use D&D terms, railroady stories with that. You can't have it's a lot
more difficult.
Yeah, you can't have so many different branching paths if you're having a very cinematic storyline going on. Like Red Dead. Right. People really complained about how Red Dead has very railroady quest lines. But it's a very cinematic story. It's like a movie that you're playing.
And I'm fine with that when it's warranted and if the story is great enough. But let's not downplay how difficult this is to do in a product that needs to ship to somebody and be finished and untouchable by the developer reacting to the player itself. Can you imagine a video game with an AI in it that can alter
That'd be cool.
the assets? And that's going to happen someday.
I mean, there have been things that have attempted that. Like, I think this was before, but a game called Facade was like you could type and talk to these people in the game and they would react to your choices and the things you made.
Do you go, are they having a small party between the three of you and you walk inside? And
yes, they're having a couple. It's like a couple and they're having relationship problems and you get into the middle of it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It came out a long time ago.
I actually, the first time I saw that game, PewDiePie played it ages ago. So I've seen him do that.
Makes sense.
Which was super fun. But this is all leading to two things. One, he's Ryan. Or
he's Braxton.
That way? I don't know.
You're right the first time over here.
Over here?
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Cool. That's Ryan.
That's Braxton.
Cool. We're the Dungeon Crawl. Today we're going to talk about, again, we've done this before.
Yeah, it's kind of a rehash episode, but
I would say this is that word. Every time I hear that. I saw the Straw Deluxe Edition with the
oh, it's so cool, man.
But I would consider this, compared to our other one, a more advanced dive into making a town. We're assuming you've done it, you've run it perhaps, and you want to know how to fix it, which is literally today. Kind of what we're doing, because Ryan is a player in the live play that we're doing, which we're pretty sure is the Dungeon Chronicles.
Yeah, I kind of like the name of that. It kind of rolls off well. It's the exact same acronym, which hopefully will not be confusing in the future.
I don't think so. I think it's cool, quirky.
Yeah, because you can use the exact same acronym and you're talking about the same kind of grouping of podcasts. TDC. Yeah. This is the Dungeon Crawl.
So, in case this is your first time here or you didn't know, we did 2 almost 5-hour sessions, 10 hours of D&D over a week where I was visiting Ryan. And that's all on his Twitch, which you can find at somewhere, I'm sure. Yeah,
twitch.tv/MELACIOUR. There's other VODs on there now, but you can still scroll back a little bit and find it.
Yeah. So if you want to go watch those, get a sneak peek at them, and maybe watch the later half of the second VOD is where the town kind of comes into play. Right. And I felt like I had prepared pretty well for it and that I had a lot of contingency plans, events to happen, things that they could do. But near the end, it kind of fizzled out because I feel like I shot myself in the leg in terms of I needed a thing to happen that the players were obviously going to do. But each of them wanted to do a little bit of things before they went to bed, and there's just a bunch of stuff going on. It didn't feel super great. So I want to talk with Ryan about that, his perception of it, and just in general making a town and running it. Because I have been experiencing a lot of option paralysis, but it's the opposite to where I've prepared a lot of flexibility, and I'm trying not to railroad. But when they get there and when it's about to happen, I'm like, there's so many ways that this could go, and I can't think about and plan until they start triggering an event. Sure. I get super stressed. So making a town... Towns are tough. Why are towns tough, though, Ryan, in your experience?
Because there's so many moving parts to them. And, I mean, when you walk into a city, you're immediately hit with, let's say you're traveling and you're on an airplane and you land in a brand new country, brand new place. For the first time, you're overwhelmed. I mean, there's so many different emotions, senses, people walking around, conversations going on. And you're trying to, of course, if you're living in the real world, you can try to research the place before you go there. And I guess you'd kind of do that in D&D. You can ask the DM, I want to look at a book before we go, or ask this NPC what it's like. But regardless, once you're there, you're kind of trying to piece together everything that you're getting within the first, minute, and try to put together this image of what the area, what the town, what the people, the culture of this place is like. You get, little piecemeal talks of, different local news that's going on, rumors that are happening. You see large landmarks going on, things, there's parties, festivals, posters being put up. And the DM has to condense all of that down into an easily digestible description at the beginning, and then turn that into NPCs and stuff happening around the players for the next time that they're in the town.
Yeah. So a lot of what we talked about in our original episode was probably, I think, Sly Flourish. Is that who it was? The guy who makes a lot of truncated D&D experiences for like the lazy DM?
Yeah, that's Sly Flourish.
That guy. So he's had a couple of guides on making towns and whatnot, and I followed that a bit, and that's kind of what we went to in our original episode. For this, I really felt like I had like 2 or 3 entry events based off of what they had done previously that could have happened. They went down one, which snuffed out a big battle they could have had. Spoilers for Ryan, I guess. So they came into that pretty easily. And then there was a guard there who was very friendly and had been dealing with a lot of people coming in. So he was super used to giving information. He wasn't being too stingy. Had to make sure that the players themselves weren't nutty or crazy. Maybe they would have just not been able to enter the city, or would have had to kill him and get in. I don't know. Just depends on what they wanted to do. So they talked to this guy for a bit, and he's got a super awesome name. His name is Charisse, and he's a cool guy. And they learned some info from him, some hotspots, the obvious events that they could get from a guard. Like there's places that have burned down, or this specific chapel burned down right now that was relevant to one of the players. There's a weird inn. They learned an NPC they were bringing along, somebody they know might be in the town. They need to find them. And there were several things that I'd put in that I had felt would have been enough to have you guys gain like a little quest log or a list of stuff that you guys wanted to do. But it turned out to be like there was one big thing and the rest was just kind of dressing, it felt.
Yeah, I mean, well, you were doing a good job of using Charisse as the plot hook generator. You're sending out, that's what you do. When people get into a town, you give them the initial things that they see, and then they're generally accosted by an NPC, or they have something on the agenda, and then that's when one guy informs them of all the things that are going on, or they come across, like a bounty board, or something that has things on it, telling the players what's going on around them, and gives them options to go start their actual exploration of the city. Because if you were just to get dropped in Waterdeep, this gigantic capital of a city, with directionless, not having an idea where to go, that's not gonna be a fun session. You got to give them agency, give them something to start working towards, and from there the world starts really opening up.
So what kind of tools does Waterdeep have if you were to drop your players into the city itself? Like, how could you get them involved into it? Are there random NPCs?
Well,
does it depend on the players having initiative?
In the Dragon Heist, whatever the hell, the
Dragon
big
Heist Waterdeep,
whatever the big one that came out. If I recall, a lot of it begins in this place called Troll Alley. I think it's this alley that has a lot of different stuff going on, lots of different shops and things, and quirky NPCs where you start learning about the city. Because there's a lot of different districts in Waterdeep, but they have a general quest, a general thing that's leading them through it, and then of course through these different NPCs and shops, they get different quests brought up, and some of them are side quests, things that help them for maybe get them higher reputation with certain NPCs. They can help them later. Like bringing like divinity into it, you've helped some guy, and then down the line he appears back up and he can help you, remembers that you've helped him in the past. So it's kind of one of those things. I really do think Waterdeep, when we talked about Waterdeep in the initial podcast, is very good for at least giving you ideas on how to run a gigantic city. I've yet to run a gigantic city, but if I were to, I would definitely look towards a Waterdeep type of place.
Do you have one in one of our games?
Oh yeah, you guys are gonna be heading there soon.
Oh my gosh, so we've been putting off. You're probably like, guys, can you just get there?
The capital of the kingdom that my party is in is a huge city. They've been hearing about it. It's a place called Ravenfall. It's got like millions of people living inside the city, and it's where all the nobles, you know, the king lives here, and there's lots of stuff going on. But I've yet to run it. I even had a big capital in the last campaign, but the players never got there either. So I've
it was
built,
like super close.
Yeah, I've built these cities, but I haven't run them. And I think the biggest contrast to the last episode will be talking about running the cities, because we built a city in the last one. This is now about really how to make it come to life.
The players have gotten there. So you've done the preparation, you've created it, you've placed like secrets, and I felt like I did this really well. There were a couple things that people could find, and of course they didn't find them all. There were directions they could take, different NPCs they can meet. They haven't met them all, and they haven't done everything I've presented in the city yet, of course, which gives me a lot of hope. But I feel like there was a point where I railroaded myself into something, and they had an inn they could go to that nearly every NPC mentioned. And it wasn't like I need my players to go there. It might have seemed that way on the session itself, because every time they talked about it or mentioned it, the inn came up. There are these two tieflings that are running an inn that gives a lot of different people a weird interaction with it. Some people are scared of it. Some people loved it. It's for a very particular type of person. Each NPC had different thoughts on it. So as to not just say, you guys need to go to this, it's really great. I wanted to present different point of views on it, so as to avoid that like railroady sense. And you guys eventually ended up going there and getting to it. And once you were in there, I needed it to happen. Like at that point, it needed to be railroaded, but I couldn't get the players to go to bed. Things are happening, and I just couldn't get the players to go to bed. And I don't know if that's a relevant thing, but whenever you're in a situation like that, Ryan, like how can you rectify it or get your players
force my players to go to bed?
Maybe not just go to bed, but what else could I have done? I could have, I think, either from nerves, either gotten rid of that and just like let other NPCs come in and talk to them. But I don't know. I definitely lost the let your players do what they want and flow with it. Like for some reason that went away with that. I don't know how I could have changed it.
I think just being comfortable with allowing the players just do their thing and like sit. Because I think at that point we weren't leaving. It was not happening. We were like, this is our inn for the night. Why would we leave? Just being okay with us, you know, talking amongst ourselves or doing our own player-centric things, and then eventually we all headed to bed, right? That's the plan.
It eventually happened, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's okay.
We had a unique time constraint too.
Yeah, but it's okay, I think, for the DM to just kind of, you know, kick back, sit, and watch the players bicker and do their thing for a minute, and then
Well, part of you had like gone to bed actually, and then somebody else wanted to do another thing, and it had like a really interesting interaction with an NPC to go pick up an item that they had prepped. And it was kind of like that person was mean, which was super interesting. So I feel like I did really well with the NPCs that you guys did meet. Did they feel like they had been in the city before and had stuff that they were doing, or did it seem like, okay, players came by and now it's their time to interact with the players? How did that feel?
Like, it didn't. You ask if it felt like
they're T-posing and waiting for the players to show up, and it's like
their
okay,
life
my quest
didn't
is queued.
begin. Yeah.
No, that's something that's super important for towns.
I think it felt lived. It's tough to make the NPCs feel like they've been there for a while.
Yeah.
I feel like that this is, you know, like what we were just saying, that they didn't start living the second this campaign began. I think you have to have, and you did have this for at least one of the NPCs, and of course you don't have this for every NPC, but have a quest or something that they want, something that they're looking for, giving the players an option to help them. Of course, only the important NPCs are going to be doing this. You don't need to have every blacksmith in the town have some crazy big quest, but if it's an important NPC, then give them this extra agency. And I keep kind of coming back to the agency thing. I think towns are very important for player agency, giving them options, giving them things to do. And maybe Braxton can attest to this a little more than I can since we just started this campaign, but I think players really like it whenever they are in a town and impact it in a way, you know, change how the town is or was, and now it's better or worse than it was previously, but you can tell that your mark has been set across it. And I think that's huge for player agency, seeing that their actions make consequences.
Well, it's the first thing I tried to do, and it's kind of hard to tell because you guys might not have had the tools to piece it together that it happened, but I think you did. There was this group of rogues, bandits, pirates, whatever, what have you, that were somehow all interconnected under one mind, possibly, and they killed, I guess, the mastermind behind it. And when they get to the town, there's all of these carriages and guys laying on the floor dead. And the guard's like, we were about to have some sort of fight, and these guys just all dropped. So the town doesn't necessarily know that you guys were the ones to do it, and it would be hard to convince them that you were. But I tried to do that with that sort of event. And to talk about each NPC having a quest is, I did want to address that with each NPC either has a unique event itself that can play if you start talking to them and trigger certain stuff, or a quest, a thing that they want. But I always struggle with, and specifically for me, in every video game I play, every quest feels like a fetch quest. Every single one of them. And I think it's just me, because there are quests that I hate that other people really love. Almost all of Cyberpunk's quests are go shoot and kill, go grab thing and put it in a drop box. And I honestly don't know if there's a way to avoid that, because that's what quests are. So
I think the way to avoid that, and the way to avoid that in games, is like the ones I've loved in games and loved in D&D are the ones that I care about, the ones that the character cares about. You know, you have that connection to, like if a quest were to pop in front of your face during your game to find your brother that you're looking for, you're taking that and you're going into it and you're interested, because that's, you know, that's something that you care about. So yeah. But I mean, how do you do that for every quest? That's another toughie.
Well, the lead up for that, and it's tough if it's a town that they're just getting dropped into, is writing and introducing these NPCs or giving some sort of connection initially, which leads into railroadiness, but maybe not, because, you know, you've talked to this NPC and your players have decided to get invested in this. So dropping something in front of them, I guess, that pokes at something, or like a heartstring that they have, kind of works out. And I did that once, I believe, but it was a pretty quick interaction, and it fizzled out pretty much right away. So I needed to figure out a way to implement a longer interaction with either a certain NPC or allow them to go do that quest then and there. But you guys were kind of tired.
Right.
And I feel like a good option to do in every town is to definitely have a couple of inns for them to go to. And I had a justification for why there was only one operating, but they did have a different, like, makeshift thing they could have gone to. So the option was there, but why would they do that? So
if we have the money,
a thing I definitely recommend is having multiple inns, which Ryan's done in the campaigns that I've played with him almost all the time. There's always been an option of 2 inns. One is more shady and lavish, probably more expensive. There's a bunch of things that you can mess around with.
Yeah, it's a way to, and we probably talked about this before, and I'll mention it a lot, but towns are, so is travel, but towns is a great way to show the players what the world is like, because every town you go to is a little nugget of this pocket of the world. It has, you know, a bunch of different people are conglomerated into one spot, and there's so many different things going on. It's a good way to see how this culture thinks about a war, and this group of people thinks about that same war. What they think about the king, the person that's ruling over them. You can get all these little bits of information from these quests, from just these little conversations that you have with them. Towns are beautiful, beautiful little things for giving backstory and history for worlds without feeling too the lore dumpy.
Yeah, so I've asked you about this specifically, I think, nearly before that particular session is, do you prepare dialogue specifically for NPCs that come up? Do you write this out? Or do you just write the character and get a general idea for what they know about and then improv with your DM's knowledge about your world as it goes? Which approach do you usually take?
It depends. Sometimes it's a mix.
If it's a mix, how much do you write for an NPC?
Some NPCs I'll write a good bit. Like if it's ones I know are going to be important to a character, to a quest. Some I'll write even less about because I don't even know if they're going to come up that session, and then sometimes they do, and then I have to go crazy about it. Others I just kind of know what they're like, and so I don't have to write too much. I just write down bullet points of stuff that I need to make sure I mention. Like a player recently met up with a family member of theirs for the first time in a long time, and I figured that was probably going to happen, but it was a chance that, you know, they'd miss this person or they wouldn't talk to this person.
Right away. Yeah.
Yeah, and it happened, and I just had written down for them their brief mannerisms and stuff that they know, stuff that is important to them, and of course, I have other secrets that they have going on. And if those get brought up, then they get talked about a little bit more. But for other NPCs, I'll have in one of the cities here, I don't even have an NPC, but all I wrote down is a local rushes in, quote, fucking hell, there's been another murder, quote. And there's another quotation says, where at? So it's like I have a conversation written out here to remind myself this is an important little plot hook. You know, there's a murder going on in the city. That's important. That's interesting. Whether the players go into these different quotations that I have brought up is a different story, but it's giving them the option. And some NPCs, for like guys that run shops, I don't really write down much for them. I'll put down their name, their race, and a couple personality traits on them. If I have a quest line in mind for them, of course, I'll write a little bit more, but generally speaking, it's very short for small NPCs like that.
Interesting, because shops are almost certainly a place that almost all players in D&D are going to go to at some point.
Yes, I use that as my history. Like if I have written stuff for the area, those are the guys that I know what the culture of that area is like. Of course, sometimes it's fun to make really weird, quirky shopkeepers.
You've done that a lot. I feel like the majority of people we've met are very quirky. You had a guy that was speaking to, I don't remember what it was. It was a random thing that we couldn't tell what it was.
Yeah, he was talking to himself. He'd act like you guys couldn't even see him talking to this other thing. But it's fun. I think shopkeeps are a way to get really weird with stuff and to just have fun, because if you're not doing that, why even roleplay it, right? Well, why even play this whole thing out? Just say, I go down and buy 2 swords and come back. We don't need to roleplay this interaction. But if you're going to roleplay it, give the players something.
Well, I'm thinking about, and it's terrible to always go to, but you've got Skyrim, and I guess Fallout does it as well. And I don't think Cyberpunk does it, but the majority of quest givers in Cyberpunk, or a lot of them, have been or initiated from shopkeeps. So
yeah.
With Skyrim, there's literally an option for any barkeep that you go up to. Heard any rumors? And you can click it like 6 times.
Well, the thing with that, they had made it like there's an infinite number of quests in that game, because they'll constantly be generating basically fetch quests. But the whole point of those quests are to send, which I think is cool, to send you to locations you haven't been to yet. They're sending you across the map or sending you to this area that they think is cool, which Fallout, New Vegas does a really cool job with that. How like the cool locations in the game have like 6 or 7 quests, full big quest lines that will point you towards. So it's very hard to miss these cool locations. While Skyrim, you have no reason to go there unless you pick up a rumor that's to go kill a Yeti sitting in there. You know, it's like
one of the first ones you get in Skyrim is always, have you heard of the College of Winterhold? And it's like, oh yeah, where is that? And it's fucking clear across the entire mountain. I'm like, guess I'm going now because it's the only quest I've got. And then you pick up some other shit along the way. But that's a tough trek because the Throat of the World's right there, and the Rift specifically, which drops. It's hard to get into that.
But if you think about it with D&D, man, you know, when we first started this campaign, I put a map down in front of my players. They saw a section on the map that had like a swirly circle, and they're what's that? Let's go there. I mean, players like interacting with weird stuff. So if you put something weird on the map, they're going to want to work that way eventually, probably.
So I'm trying to think of, and I've come up with a lot of, I guess, when we start up again, what I want to do and improve it. And I can't talk about it too much because Ryan never spoils shit. So I definitely can't do it. I can't give him that satisfaction of, oh, Braxton, I can't tell you, but you can tell me.
Yeah, tell me everything, man.
But basically, there's a thing that's almost surefiredly going to happen whenever they begin their next session. And that's going to be a fun thing that exists. And there's a lot of different interactions that can happen during that. But once they get out of that, I've got an option here. And this is just theory crafting. This isn't literally what's going to happen. But I could yeet another 1 or 2 interactions that come into them based off of which direction they go. Or maybe as soon as this one thing finishes, like Ryan said, a guy, there's another murder. He runs in. We're like, what? What's going on? We've got Hearts of Good. They go do that. I don't know. But they've got, at this point, we're taking an inventory of what we got. couple of NPCs they know, one that they have a challenge with that said, hey, you can't take this NPC to where they want to go unless I know you're strong enough to protect them. So I feel like that is the one like pretty decent thing I've done, and you guys probably are thinking, oh, this is a super simple quest. You've foreshadowed what the monster's going to be. I want to surprise you, I promise.
Okay.
It's not going to be simple. But that's something I know I've done really well. And then I've got the leadership in the town. I think that's usually a pretty damn important thing. Would you agree?
Yeah. What type of government is happening there? The politicians. I mean, I like politics and just in general writing and stuff. So politics are very important. It shapes how everything works.
Well, specifically in Icewind Dale, I think they outline the leader of each town pretty specifically.
Yes.
And who they are. And you can even become one of them. But would you say it's important to have, they could be anywhere in the world, but the leader, mayor, what have you, of a town be there and be a person they can interact with?
Yeah, and
or
if
can
not,
you kind of leave that out?
Have a reason for that. Like the first city my players ever went to, there was a goblin attack, and the mayor was involved and was hurt and couldn't, they couldn't go talk to them because they weren't high enough on the totem pole to go meet up with this mayor who's now possibly on his deathbed. There are rumors that he was dying and stuff. So they couldn't go meet him. But he was there. So he's kind of like in the background. But so if you're going to have don't want the players to meet the big honcho, or the honcho's not there to talk to you, but have a good reason.
So in regards to size, it doesn't, I'm just kidding. For towns in particular, I know there's not a right or wrong with you need to have a mega city or every town needs to be a general size. Every place you go to can have a different population, different story to it.
Yes.
But is there a standard that when somebody's creating a town that you think they should follow? Because if you really genuinely think about it, a town has people that have lived in it, have jobs, and go about their day, and it can be in the near thousands. And if you have a mega city, millions. Like it really can. And thinking about that as a DM, you really don't need to prepare. You can. Every single NPC, give them a name. You don't need to be able to do like in Cyberpunk, scan them and they've got a name, a wanted bounty, and that could have just been randomly generated. Probably didn't take them that much
100%,
time.
yeah.
But what do you think is a good rule of thumb to follow when you're populating a town? And how many like important people do you need to have? Do you make a list of that? Is there a minimum number you want to follow with? And how in depth do you go with like preparing them in like comparison to just a simple NPC? We touched on it a bit with like shopkeeps and how you don't make them that complex. But I know I've seen your notes in particular, and you have a particular way. You showed me. I didn't peek. You showed me.
I didn't. Yeah.
How you prepare NPCs. In towns.
You ask a very interesting question. There's a book called Spectacular Settlements by, let me try and find out who it is.
Slight first, because it's always slight first.
No. It's going to drive me nuts. They really not have it on here. Just look up Spectacular Settlements D&D 5e. You can probably find it. It was a Kickstarter. It has the author here, but it doesn't say the company that made it. I can't remember. Great book. But they actually have a specific table. And like kind of, it's almost like they made a rule set on how, if you're going to make a town, this is the way to go about it. Like there's generation tables. And they have them for various different sizes.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah, I'll find
resources, please.
Yeah, but it'll break it down. Like it'll say for this amount of population, there should be X amount of inns and X amount of shops and stuff. And I've only used this for a couple of towns because I haven't had it forever. But like some of my towns have 2,000 people in it, 5,000 people in it. I'd say if it's anything what you would consider to be a large city, I think it's got to have at least 2, maybe 3 inns in, have a couple different options for blacksmiths. But if you really think about it, unless the players have a reason to go to a different blacksmith, why would they not just go? Why would they say we're just gonna go to a blacksmith? It doesn't really matter to them. So if you don't need to go that crazy with it, you can just make a single blacksmith, unless there's one that's a little quirkier, one that's more specialized, does magic stuff, etc. But you gotta have some temples in there, you gotta think how the barracks fit in. how many guards are roaming around. And this Spectacular Settlements book covers all that stuff. What type of, how much the government and law is important into the town, if it's got a market square, what factions and guilds kind of rule the city. That's all stuff you should be thinking about before you really start running it.
Hold on there. I know you specifically, if you're looking at this camera or you're listening with your ears, you're thinking, I don't want to do all that shit. I don't give a shit. That stuff's boring.
Oh my God.
Listen, you don't have to.
You have to. No, you don't have to. No.
So in my case, that stuff typically when I am a player, I don't get interested in it unless it's directly related to what I want to do. Player agency again. For Ryan, since he's one of my players and I know he really enjoys that kind of stuff, I'm trying to challenge myself to prepare for that and do it in the future. But I do want to say you do not have to make a government for every town. If you're playing casually with some friends, you guys just pop into a town. You guys, okay, here's the inn. You guys go there.
I mean, your government can be literally as simple as a single mayor, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be much more complicated than that.
And if you commit a crime, he hits you over the head with a banana.
But if we're talking about more like going the extra mile for like immersion and stuff, then having the mayor and having their personality or what family they come from impacting the laws and the populace here, I think it's very, very telling for certain towns.
Did The Witcher do that well? Because
I think it did, yes.
Because in every video game I've played, in any town you go into, and again, particularly Skyrim, there's one inn, one apothecary, one blacksmith. Even for Riften, I think is that?
Yeah.
Which one is that?
That's the one with the Thieves Guild,
right?
Yeah.
Maybe not Riften. What's the main city's name? Not the main city. Not Whiterun. The one on the top left with the capital. Why is that name always escape me every time?
I hardly ever go there.
Exactly. So you guys, the Imperial City, or whatever the hell it's called, Solitude. Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Woo!
Solitude. Yeah.
Okay, so that place, it's a massive city, but they've got one of everything.
Yeah.
And it's a video game. There's limited assets, but it works.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, like, it has one of everything. Other towns may not have a magic shop, and you can think about that in D&D terms as well. If your game, even if it is a heavy magic setting, not the smallest of towns are going to have, really nice enchanting and magic shops. So
Ryan's pretty big on that. His world has no fancy shops, and we have to go scavenging for stuff all the time.
But some do. But some cities have really nice stuff.
Ryan's like, I've never been there.
I know they have the resources. Like they went to this very fanciful city way off on an island somewhere, and that had a little bit of everything. They had some fun stuff in it.
Oh, that place just scared me though. We weren't allowed to go there. We didn't have the credit cards.
That's what you do. If you give all this fun choices, then you got to have something else going on underneath the surface bubbling.
I sometimes, with games that I just enjoy playing and I go through passively, and particularly talking about Ryan's campaign, I don't know if he's just like a godlike DM, because nobody's perfect. But when we're playing, like, genuinely, I've most often never think this is D&D, this is something he wrote, this is a town he prepared. Most often it's like, this is a town in the world that my character's playing in, and it just kind of works.
That's very nice of him to say. Well, I'll take those $10.
I don't know what it is, though. And if you've never been a DM before and you've played in a lot of games, I really challenge you to specifically make something, run a town, or do whatever. Run a town specifically in a one-shot or whatever, just to understand what your DM does.
Right.
And this isn't helping the DMs out there. Right now they're listening to this and they're like, Braxton, give me the tips. Tell me, why is Ryan's town so good? But to reference the town on the island that we went to, there was so much going on there. And one of our players had it was a big city. And there was like crazy alien shit going on in the mountains with some Yetis. Yeah. And there's like this entire closed off district that nobody can get into, and magic's not allowed. They've got a massive barrier. I'm like,
and a player fell into it.
Yeah, I want to do the thing and experience that. And they're like, you're not cool enough. You're not with the royals.
But you bring up continuing with that idea this is a cool town, lots of fun stuff to explore. But you guys also had a very important quest line that you wanted to continue.
No,
well, no, that's I don't know if it's an error on my part, but it's something to think about when you're making these cities, is if you have these cool plot hooks and these other ideas that you want to build into the city, you have to keep in mind what brought them here in the first place. If this is just a way stage to get them from point A to point B, they're not going to want to get locked into the inner politics of the city too much. And for, at least the thing I gave them was the choice was you can just wait here a couple days, or you can maybe escalate the time that your ship is being repaired by helping out this quest. This quest has been brought to your attention. But a lot of the cities that I have ran, I will have like 3 or 4 small little side quest plot hooks that are brought up. And just, to me, they make it feel like the city is more alive.
Yeah.
Because the players have hardly ever done these things. Sometimes they do. For example, in one of the cities, I actually have it sitting in front of me in my plot hook section. One of them was this Shadowfell measle creature from Mordenkainen's.
That was quite the adventure.
Came out, was out here murdering people. That's that quote that I heard earlier. It said, "Fucking hell, there's been another murder." It was this guy, this creature that was going around and strangling people. And they were like, that's kind of interesting. Let's go explore and discover this and figure out what's going on.
Guys, it led to the fucking Shadowfell. We went in there and I think one of us died.
Yeah, she just went unconscious. She got kidnapped by this measle. Because they were quick enough to save her. But I've had other quest lines that the plot hook was given, but there were so many other things that the players were doing that they never continued it. Like there was it seemed to be my favorite thing. There was another murderer going on in.
I likes to kill people
in this other city that they're in, but they were so busy with a bunch of other stuff that they couldn't address it. There was also a guy. Murder? Well, there was a guy had. Actually, it was very short. You might have not remembered it, but
they were looking for somebody.
That was different. I was just to say there were 2 plot hooks. One was a guy had gone missing.
Same town?
Yeah, same town. Another one was very briefly they heard in an inn that people... Actually, no, they went to a graveyard. I don't remember why the party was... 2 of the party members were in a graveyard. But regardless, they were talking to the crypt keeper. And he was like, I've been really busy recently because there's been a lot more deaths. A lot of them been children. It's really weird. But they were super busy. He's having like a revelation. No! They were super busy and they had a lot of different stuff going on, so they never addressed them. But
what town was this in?
The one you guys were just in with the prison. And they were
children?
Speaking of prison, they were planning a prison break. So they have like a billion different things on their plate. But to me, offering these plot hooks, and there are so many different fun generators out online you can do to get plot hooks. Or you can just open up the monster manual, choose a monster, and make a plot hook for it, which is what I like doing. And I guess they make it more interesting. You make the world feel more alive, even if they never get brought up.
Well, the interesting thing about the quests that you usually give us is they don't have to happen, and we don't need to do them.
Yes.
Like we did not need to bust that guy out of prison. It was quite literally something that one of our players just said, it could be fun to break this guy out. He's the closest thing we know to getting to the city that we want to go to and the problem we're experiencing. We're like, okay,
let's do it.
In your game specifically, you love, and maybe it just works out this way, playing with urgency because things are happening around us. In video games, again, it usually revolves around the player. So I'm not used to experiencing that. So when you get into a town, specifically in D&D, there's 2 approaches you can do. Maybe you're playing and your players are literally the chosen ones and things revolve around them. Or maybe they're just normal people, adventurers in the world, and should they decide to go around and promise a bunch of people that they're going to do a bunch of things, they might have to let somebody down.
Yeah.
I think that's something that really makes a town feel pretty lived into.
That person will remember it and be like, hey, asshole, remember when you were here before and you said you were going to help me with this problem? Well, your prices just went up.
Yeah, so that's something that always makes me a bit nervous in Ryan's towns because like somebody will come up to us like, hey, can you do this thing? And I'm like,
maybe.
Braxton wants to do all the quests and take all the things because I'll sit in his quest log for this town here. But Carrie, my player, has a very short list of things in time that he can do now in this moment.
And my favorite thing in, I guess, writing for D&D is making people make decisions, having multiple different things, and you can only pick one of those, and the other 2 will keep going on, and so either get worse or get better depending on what they do or don't do. and to then play with morally gray stuff. I love having, there not be a clear good choice. And if Fallout does a good job of this, movies sometimes do this, but make you care for the enemy. Is he a bad guy? I don't really know. I can understand where he's coming from,
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to write stuff in D&D. It's hard. It's very hard to write good morally gray stuff, but I think it really makes the players interested.
Yeah, something I want to play with a bit more, talking about the usual form of NPC has a thing they need to do, asks player. You can advance that by having the player get involved with that NPC, and then it's a favor that they ask only because they're close enough. And then conversely, once the players have been in a town long enough, and reoccurring NPCs bring those in a lot of the time. That's really fun for a town, having a familiar face. Having the players know NPCs that can do services or quests for them.
Yeah, so call them up in the future.
Know that town is a tool for them where they can ask a favor and then impart quests on NPCs, I think is a really good thing to do. But again, to do that, you might need reoccurring NPCs or rumors from around the world they've heard that X person can do Y thing for them. So that's something that I'm really trying to play with in my towns in the future. I want to see what I can do with that. If my players decide to come back, revisit places, do X and Y and Z. But for towns in particular, what do you think a new DM or maybe somebody that is like trying to ramp up their town experience feels when they've got like option paralysis, or they feel like there's too many things that can happen? So if they really just need to make it simple enough, what can you do?
I think hopefully you know your players enough to know that if you dangle things in front of them, they'll grab one. They're not just going to say, screw the DM, screw Braxton, we're just going to go off. We're going to leave the town you just spent decades creating and we're going to go somewhere else. Yeah. So hopefully you at least trust your players enough that you can put something in front of them and they'll check it out. So I think you should at least have a plot hook or two. I think 2 plot hooks is good for every city at the very least, because one is almost railroady. You have one choice for them to go explore.
Yeah.
Other ones, plot hooks don't have to be typical kind of fetch quest or kill this, do this thing. It can very much, like with Braxton's Inn, the plot hook was just, there's this weird inn that people keep talking
good
about.
At first, but people, like, their reactions to it are really varied and you don't remember what happens. Some people really love the experience, some people really hate it. So it's just like, we kind of want to formulate our opinion on our own. Those like really awkward miscellaneous quests that don't show up in the main quest log.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. But when you do it, it turns out to be this super freaking quirky thing. Like a lot of Daedric quests in Skyrim are in the miscellaneous tab. Quests that you don't care about a lot of the time because they're super boring sounding. But one of them, I think, literally turns into like a Hangover reference where you get drunk with the Daedric Prince of...
What are you talking about?
Sanguine? Was that him? I don't remember.
I don't know, but I know it's a really interesting quest.
It's like really small tidbits, I think, are ones that I really enjoy. Maybe it won't make the town feel lived in, but toss a couple of those in there.
I think it does. I think it makes it feel like a town that stuff is going on, even if the players aren't there. This, drunkard will be in this bar doing his normal drinking stuff, even if the players weren't there. It just so happens they're there. He's going to invite them to drink with them, and then it turns out they drank too much. Or maybe he put something in their drink, It just creates these possibilities.
And something that I don't think I land super hard on is the like slate of the town when you first get there.
That's really hard.
I think that is super hard to do, especially if you aren't used to, you don't have to be studied on architecture, but you're not used to describing scenery. Definitely practice that a good bit, because that can be the thing that grabs a player, like a specific image they see, or there's like a really tall tower that's going on and there's a wizard or somebody casting a spell. Like, why is he there? What's going on? Can we try to navigate to that part? And then along the way, they run across some NPCs. So that carrot, I think, is always the best thing in D&D just in general.
Yeah, I always make sure to write on my town sheets landmarks. I have a landmarks big bullet point, and then like 2 or 3 things underneath that. A big temple or something, a big castle in the background, stuff that the players will 100% see, no matter usually from which direction they're coming into this city, and stuff that will immediately spark, okay, this is kind of what's important to this town. If this town has a gigantic temple, Obviously, religion is going to be important here. If they have a big castle in the background, obviously the person that rules over the city thinks they're a hotshot. So think about these big landmarks that will be important to the players. You can always, if you want to do something kind of like almost like a Big Brother kind of thing, where you have these towers that are constantly making the players feel like they're being watched. There's something always just on the horizon. This castle is just looming over them, and you can have the guards walking around. It's very easy to paint pictures with very few, words and very few locations.
It's the
Make sure you hit senses too. Senses are important.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Ryan does that a lot. You can literally see the like sight, smell, sound, hear whenever he goes through it, which I mean is great. We learned that in high school and middle school whenever we were learning how to write. But it's the same principle, I think, as first impressions for a person. There's a lot judging a book by its cover, blah blah blah. Don't do it.
Do it.
But
don't do it. But we all do it.
But we all do it. So when you see somebody, looking at them and the little cues that you can read will influence the way that you react and respond to them. Conversely, the same as a town. If I'm playing a character that like was excommunicated from a religion for some reason because I did something super wrong, and I get into a town where that's the main religion, I'm gonna like keep a low profile. So lots of little things that you can tell your players like that to make them have to role play in a certain way when they get there is also really good. But in regards to crafting towns in general, Ryan, my last question for you is, and I know when I'm looking about writing stuff, structuring it is always really difficult, and I can get stuck on like the brass tacks for that.
Right.
With your town sheets, how big are they? How do you organize it? And how do you navigate through it when you're there?
That's a good question.
Because that was a lot.
So I use OneNote for those who don't know, but you could very easily do this in Word. You could write it out on a piece of paper. I will start with obviously the name at the top of the city, and then underneath that I will have in big bold the landmarks. Have like a couple there. Underneath that I'll have figures of importance, important NPCs that will very often, I would say, get brought up in conversation or are more than likely going to get brought up by the players, or something that's, a quest has brought them here for this specific NPC. And I will always add, like if I improv an NPC on the spot, I will add that guy to that list. So make sure I remember him later.
I can do that.
But then locations come underneath that, and usually that is accompanied with a map next to it. And maps you can generate online. You can very easily make your own. And if you generate them online, they'll have buildings everywhere. And I'll just take a pen or in Word or something. I'll just have a text box and write 1 and then 2 and then connect that to a location.
And you just scroll down. I know within OneNote you can click on stuff and extrapolate, but it's an entire, for your town at least, it's just one scroll.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But the locations I have minimized unless I open it. So like I'll have one here. I double click on it and it opens to describe what you see on the outside, what's on the inside, what guys are inside, what they're selling, etc. Then at the very bottom I'll have plot hooks, a brief history and demographic of the town. So if that gets brought up, you see a lot of tieflings, and this is very important for this area for some reason. Stuff like that. That's usually, it's about how I run. And it's tweaked a lot over the years. I used to just write down the first thing you see, but that can vary depending on which direction you come from. So now I just go to landmarks instead.
So if you're looking for resources in particular, that's super easy. Google search for you, or you can jump to our, so you want to make a town, world building, or resources at the table. They're bing, bang, bong right next to each other, and they're one of our earlier episodes. So if you feel like jumping through the gauntlet, I know for a fact we mentioned a lot of resources in those. I just wanted to bring up towns again because I had just run one and didn't feel like super great about it. Just with the ending, it felt flat a little bit. So I wanted to like rehash it with Ryan. And if you were interested, you could jump into the episode itself and kind of quote unquote read along, watch along, so you can see why I'm asking certain questions. We're hoping to do that a bit more in the future with the Dungeon Chronicles. I'm going to mess that up at some point, flipping it off when I'm going to talk about one of them. But that's something we're hoping to do in the future as well, because not only is it going to be a campaign with me, but if ever that campaign ends, it should, the next person will take up the mantle and make their own campaign. We'll have different art for that. So it's going to be something kind of in tandem with the dungeon crawl itself to supplement things, because there's going to be issues that arise in things. Maybe we're going to have player feedback, and they're going to mention it to the DM, and we want to talk about that on the podcast.
Yeah, say how sucky the DM did. What, DM will say how sucky the player was. Like, that was a really dickhead thing you did back there, man.
What a dickhead. And it's important to have that kind of, what's the, not I don't want to say, it's not intercourse, because that's sex. What's
that's sex.
Term for like talking back and forth?
Dialogue?
What is that? Not dialogue. It's another course word.
Argument.
Course? I don't know what it is. It's
discourse.
It's out of my brain. Discourse. Discord? Discourse? Is that it?
Yeah, this is discourse. Yeah, discourse.
It's 1 a.m. currently right now. This episode comes out in 6 hours.
It does. Wow.
It's almost the holidays. We're chilling out. Ryan, is there anything else you want to talk about towns? Wrap this up.
I mean, just the other thing about resource. I'll tweet it out from our Twitter at Dungeon Crawl Pod.
At Dungeon Crawl Pod.
At
so
Dungeon
it's
Crawl Pod,
on
yeah.
the Twitter and the Instagram.
Yeah, I'll tweet out Spectacular Settlements. It's by Nord Games. It's by Nord Games.
You found it. Nice.
Yeah, they make great stuff. I have the physical copy, and it's delicious.
Don't need it.
But they make incredible stuff. They even have a free PDF preview on their website. So if you want to check it out before you purchase, the PDF is only $25 too. So it's very cheap, very nice. As they say it themselves, it's an engine of inspiration. So I'll tweet it out. People go check it out. Give them some press. They got good stuff. I use a lot of their cards that they make.
Cool beans. For some reason, this episode like flew by like way quicker than the other ones did.
Yeah, that was a quick episode.
Very odd to me. I feel like we crammed a lot of stuff in there. As Ryan mentioned before, if you want to go on to those social media things, it's at Dungeon Crawl Pod. For longer form, old communication types, Gmail is a thing that we have. thedungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com is where you can send us your longer inquiries. I guess I'm going to send you to Twitch for Melasior, Melacior.
Nice.
If you want to jump over there and watch our live play, where you are thinking in like
early next year.
Early next year, I want to say 2 weeks or so is when you may be able to start listening to the episodes in podcast form.
Wow, that's quick.
Weeks. Yeah, it is getting soon. And then at that point is when we'll start streaming again once that first episode comes out. I think. I don't know. I don't know what we're working with that. But look forward to that. Yeah. We've got some fun art things working out with the same artists that we have for the one that you're listening to right now. Bruno_DESN, I think is usually his
That's
handle
correct.
On pretty much everything. Give him a check out. He's making a video game and working on a couple other projects. Super fun guy. But I think that's all from me. Ryan, do you have anything else?
Yeah, make sure you check us out on YouTube, guys. You can go to youtube.com and type into the search bar the Dungeon Crawl Podcast, and there we are. Hit that subscribe button. Just last week, we had a fun video of us playing Keep Talking, Nobody Explodes.
That was way more fun than I was expecting it to be.
It was fun times. We kill it there as well. And we have a Discord. Yeah, make sure you go check out our Discord. Hop on in there. We post updates when we're going live, streaming, all that fun stuff. You can very easily hop over there. We also talk about games, tabletop, etc., etc.
If you're interested in discussing specific video games, just to list it off for you, we've got a general game, Dragalia Lost, Fire Emblem, Genshin Impact, Mass Effect, Monster Hunter, Magic the Gathering, Risk of Rain 2, RPG Maker, Cyberpunk 2030 billion is that game. There's a lot of anime memes and whatnot that go on in there, so feel free to jump in.
Yeah, it's a fun place. Come check us out. Last thing, I'm gonna chill it out this week, guys. I'm chilling it out this week. You know, if you're interested, you know, it's up to you. You can do it. Take it or leave it. I appreciate it. If you go to Apple Podcasts,
it's a Christmas present for us.
Yeah, Christmas present. Go to Apple Podcasts, find us, the Dungeon Crawl, and you know, if you're feeling crazy, if you're feeling giving for the holiday season, hit that 5 stars. Go to the reviews and type in, "Here's your Christmas present." That's all I want, right? That's all we need. Just do that, and that'll, you know, help us out a lot. I appreciate you.
In closing, Merry Christmas Eve. Have a fun holiday. If you don't see you because you're busy until the new year, have a happy new year. Stay safe. As always, he's Ryan.
He's Braxton.
Am I pointing right?
Yeah, you're pointing right. Yeah.
It's reflecting me. It makes it so difficult. This has been the Dungeon Crawl. Thank you. Make your town. Get out there.
Make sure you tune in next week where we talk about all the fun stuff that went down in 2020, baby. It was the best year of our lives.
I'm so dead and tired from it. Let it end. End my suffering.
But we got fun stuff planned for 2021, man. It's the year of the crawl, baby. The year of the dungeon.
I feel like you just set something in motion that can't be stopped.
Hell yeah, man.